All right, hi there. I'm Troner, or Tanner. Either or is fine. And I've been really enjoying Grand Archive. I started playing at Mortal Ambition because I liked the design of Kongming, and some of my friends were playing it, so I went in and I wanted to play. And I was a little disappointed to hear that when I started playing, that Kongming, her advanced element cards, they're not that good, right? People are saying Tera needs help, Tera's unplayable, and everything like that. And there is a slight truth to that. If you want to play Tera and you want to top an Ascent or have long goals like that, then you're right, Tera is bad in that case. It is not going to do that. Tera has too many bad matchups, and it's not, you're going to struggle against some of the better decks in the format, specifically decks that can compete with the long-term scaling of Tera. Those ones will give you some trouble. But the good news is that Tera is not actually that bad. If you're just playing Tera, like a heavy Tera package, at a local level or regional level, you're going to find that the cards work together to create a coherent game plan that you just haven't really considered before, because oftentimes in Grand Archive, you want an advanced element card to say, win me the game, or progress me to a game state where I am winning the game. That is not what Tera does, right? Tera is not a Lightweaver's Assault. Tera is not Merlin skilling up with a Fireball type of play. Tera is not any of that. But what Tera is Tera is a mechanism to stay alive and maintain a bunch of value. The way that I like to put it is that in Tera, these cards are all very kind of like planty and stuff like that. There's vines and whatnot. Tera is the deck taking root. So your goal in a Tera heavy deck is going to be playing for the long game, right? You are expecting your first game to take like 30 to 40 minutes sort of deal. Like, you're going to be edging on the longer side, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be bunkering down, you're going to be holding in, you're going to be playing protection, you're going to be playing cards that heal, you're going to be playing cards that get you value, and you're going to try and put yourself in a position where you have outvalued the other player so much that they cannot do anything, and you get to do whatever you want with the amount of resources you have, or you get to a point where you're holding so much that you can just use all the tools that you've grown and you've acquired to win a game. And there's a couple ways to do that. So with Tera, we are going to play a slow deck that is going to put people in a hostage situation until we are in a position where we can win the game. And that's fun. I've been having a lot of enjoyable time doing this, and I understand why this style of deck hasn't really been uncovered by anyone before, because it's very counterintuitive to traditional Grand Archive deck building. I mean, for the goodness gracious, we have about 24 Tera cards in the main for the deck profile that I used at a really recent case tournament that I got top cut at, which was a lot of fun. Anyways, yeah, let's go in and sort of look at some of these cards. I'm going to do a little deck profile as to what my list looked like for that event. Kind of talk about some ratios and explain these Tera cards and how they help and what they do in the overall game plan. So anyways, I'll go through the norm cards first, or actually, let's go through the material deck first. I find that the material deck helps explain cards that you see later. So first and foremost, we are on 24 Tera cards. How do we not brick? Spirit of Serene Water. We need that glimpse, and we need that glimpse bad for a version of this deck. And our water count is reasonably high for this. We're somewhere in there with like 10 plus water cards for sure, maybe even veering into 20 or so. But this will also give us a heal. We can lineage release, and we don't need our water cards that badly when we start getting to Tera, and the Tera cards and the norm cards start putting in a majority of the work. So the recover stick lineage release is going to help us get to that point and survive, and this glimpse is going to help us make sure that we don't brick and we see cards that are really important to us early on, like Hydroguard Retainer, or like Tera Sight for future scaling, or Dungeon Guide, right? And of course, we have our Kongming level 1, we have our Kongming level 2, and we have our Kongming level 3. lo and behold, to no one's surprise, we need to play Kongming, obviously, to play our Kongming cards and to play our cards that synergize with the shifting currents. So she has to be here. We need Kongming lineage to go into Kongming level 2, and Kongming level 2 also gives us the most important effect that Kongming can give us, which is an inherited effect. Whenever your shifting currents change from north to south, draw a card. We're going to be drawing a lot of cards. This is going to help us do that. This is going to help us refill our hand after we've kind of sped run through level 3 and lost some influence along the way, right? And then Kongming Fei Edelon. What she's going to do is she's going to recover us some health from our banished tarot cards that we have used to level up, and we have a lot of tarot cards, so we're likely going to banish some tarot cards to level up. And then whenever we activate a spell, we're going to change our shifting current directions, which will help us better proc Kongming Aesthetic Vice, and will also help us in other areas as well. So this is the core of the deck. This is the core game plan right here. And then also in our material deck, we have some important fun cards. We have our Backup Charger. This is a staple card. It will draw you a card as you're leveling up. And we are, of course, playing Fracturize, so we can plus and level up off of having the Backup Charger as well. Really important. Hard to go without it. We have a Terrafring. This synergizes with some other cards that we have, but also if you've leveled up and you need to stabilize, you need to not die this turn, Terrafring will help ward off a bunch of combat damage that could be incoming, which is going to help you make it there later on. It also has cool synergy with another card that we run at a small count that can really help shut down a turn and help us get somewhere as well. It's also really good to Terrafring on the turn that you summon some of our advanced element allies so they can stick on the board during that period of time. We are also running a Safeguard Amulet in terms of we're going to stop there with the kind of regular staple cards. Safeguard Amulet is going to help us against some rough matchups, which is a Luxem Xander to help prevent some damage. It's going to help us against currently existing Fractal players. It's going to help us against Cleric Burn players. It's going to help us a lot against any of those heavy spell damage variants or Aerosana as well. So we keep it in the main. It's just useful right now, but it is probably one of the more replaceable cards depending on your local meta. Alright, we're going to go into Toma Sorcery. We're running Descent Blast, and we're running cards that need Empower. This card replaces itself, so we can convert a floating memory into a draw, or we can use it to get to that Empower point, and we can start hucking things with Empower, which is really nice. It means that we don't have to waste a card to Empower as well. Toma Sorcery putting in a lot of work for that. We have our Fan of Seven Debts. This card converts Float to the best out of any card in our deck, because often what this does is we're on a turn with Kongming, we use a floating memory, we draw a card of Fan of Seven Debts, and then if our winds are north, we sack Fan of Seven Debts to draw a card, and if our winds are south, we sack Fan of Seven Debts to put our winds to the north, winds go to the south, and then we draw a card. It's really good for this. It also has a purpose with an important side deck card or main deck card, depending on your local meta, which we'll get to when we get there. And then we're also running Quicksilver Grail for an obvious reason, because of its companion, Covenant of Thorns. Covenant of Thorns is a really important card alongside Quicksilver Grail, because against a lot of decks, say we're playing against a Shenju deck that does not currently have a way to Fracturize Covenant of Thorns or another way to get it off the board, and then we're going to attach it to it, and it's going to likely kill itself on its attack, or at least stabilize there, or against common sideboard cards like, for example, and I think I've put her over here as well. For us, Morgan is a common sideboard card since we can play it and it helps us, and it also stops healing against, say, things like Luxem Xander, which is like a tech card that you can side or main. But also, if you Covenant of Thorns a Morgan, you're going to stop all non-combat damage until they get to a point that they can remove Covenant or combat damage Morgan, and we have some good ways to prevent that. So that's also an important play as well. So it just goes a long way. This is very strong. It's going to prevent a lot of damage, and it's going to likely clear something. So these combination of guys are important to run. Also, this isn't bad as well, and putting Terrafring or Sacred Amulet under this isn't bad either, and we'll kind of get to that in a second as to how that works. And then also we have our fun card, Coronal Rejuvenation. This card reads kind of bad because Preserve is a very underdeveloped mechanic at the moment in Grand Archive. But it's really helpful once you get there and once you get to a grind game to recover resources. And also when you're in a scenario when a certain card has been negated, Coronal Rejuvenation will really get you there. We are aiming to outvalue our opponent. And if we can convert our spells in our graveyard to value for us in the future, we have succeeded in that, right? We're going to lock them down, and then we're going to return resources. We're going to start using them again. It's really important. For those of you not familiar, as an additional cost to materialize this card, besides 1 card cost already, banish a preserved card from your material deck. And anything that you use to banish this can be used with the rest of this effect. So if we banish something off of this, we can use it with this effect. And then on enter, banish any amount of spell cards from your graveyard, and then we can tap this at slow speed to play one of those banished spell cards. That is really important in your late game, or really important for recovering cards that you've lost from various angles. I've had like a Terrasite Extravating touched and use, say, like a Record of Rejuvenation to get that back, so I can start getting my value again from a preserve that happened elsewhere. So this card's really cute. It only works if you're playing a certain set of cards, though. So be warned, this isn't going to work in every Terra Mage sort of deck. So before we get to our lovely, I believe 24 or something beautiful green Terra cards, we're going to kind of go through the other parts of our deck because they help make our Terra cards make a little bit more sense. So first and foremost, let's show you 2 Nascent Blasts. Earnestly, I would probably run this at 3 to 4. Nascent Blast is really good early game removal. It's going to help deal with some cards that are relatively problematic for you, like Dream Fairy. It also synergizes with a few cards here, where it synergizes with Tome of Sorcery, and if you get an early Tome of Sorcery, you can just start Nascent Blasting them every turn without losing a card, and it'll keep your hand size up, and it'll make leveling up feel not as painful when you get there, right? Since Nascent Blast will be preserved whenever it's empowered. And also, it's really fun with Coronal Rejuvenation, since if you manage to banish Nascent Blast with Coronal Rejuvenation, right? And then we have empowered this Nascent Blast, and then we tap Coronal Rejuvenation to play this Nascent Blast. Nascent Blast, instead of going to the graveyard where it usually would off of Coronal Rejuvenation, it's going to return to our memory. So we're actually going to get a card back off of this. So this is just some really cool synergy that you can have with Nascent Blast. So you could play, I played them out more. This is just a comfort pick while I was trying out other cards for that case tournament. We have 4 Fast Cure. This is important since we often start the game with not a lot of influence. Our influence game happens later. So we are frequently recovering 4, and we are frequently getting Floating Memory to help us level up or to convert into wonderful cards like Tome of Sorcery, or wonderful cards like Fan of 7 Deaths, which will help us draw more cards later. You can run this at anywhere from 0 to 4. Honestly, you can replace this with Floating Memory cards of your choice, I think, or even tech cards of your choice. It's a very sideable card depending on the matchup, and it's a very replaceable card, but I've had a really good time running it. I think it's felt really good. Really important card alert, Harmonious Mantra. I'd play this at 3 to 4. The thing is early game, you're not really capable of doing a whole lot, right? Early game, you're relying on cards like Hydro Guard or Ardent when they get out there to do a lot of heavy lifting. You don't always have them. Harmonious Mantra, when you start leveling up and you start getting places, is just going to give you a bunch of progress that was lost from a bunch of things hitting face or spells hitting face, and you're going to be able to recover from that. When you're level 3, this card reads Recover 6, and when you have various sources of Empower, you're going to be recovering even more. And we have some cute sources of Empower to get us there. And also, when you get to the late game, Coronal Rejuvenation, tap Harmonious Mantra, Recover 6 every turn. Really important. It's going to be really helpful in a lot of matchups. The problem is obviously if you're against a deck that is trying to OTK you, try to get you to 25 health. And we have cards to deal with that, right? We have cards on the side, we have cards in the main to try and make sure that we stay alive for those instances as well. Remember, we are stalling the game out. We're kind of trying to hold the other player hostage. This is going to do it, and this is going to help us stabilize and get there. 3 Heightened Spellcraft, honestly you can run this anywhere from 2 to 4, or replace it with Mnemonic Charm. I just have these cool little stamped store promos here, and I mean that's pretty cool. But it's, you know, you get Floating Memory when you've already leveled up into Kongming, and it's going to give you Empower 3. It can combo with cards like Harmonious Mantra to heal even more. It can combo with other cards to secure you a kill. Leeching Bolt, we'll see later. It's a skill, so unfortunately it does not get recovered with Coronal of Rejuvenation. But that also means it doesn't trigger your Empower when you use them. So, as I said, play either this or Mnemonic Charm, but I'd play some amount of Mnemonic Charm and Heightened Spellcraft despite her inherent Empower. Beautiful for Ardent Cloud Striker, 3 to 4, but I always miss him when I don't play him at 4. So the thing about Ardent is, Ardent presents an immediate threat. When he's on the board, he's this 3/4 body, which is rather privileged, and then he can clear a guy and then is a target, because if you've leveled up into Kongming and, you know, your lovely shifting currents are facing to the west, he's going to start hitting champion for 6. So basically this card reads, you need to spend your resources to get rid of me instead of getting rid of Kongming, right? So that really helps us. He helps us stabilize. He also gives us combat damage for later in the game when we need it. Maybe someone has a safeguard amulet turn and we need to use our big hand size to play some ardents and begin hitting face to make progress. And also, if you get really lucky, he can give you early wins just by being so aggressive against some like late scaling decks that don't really have good outs to ardent in early game. So I'd play him at 3 to 4. I often regret whenever I play him at 3. And then of course, for Dungeon Guide. I mean, we're a level 3 deck. We can skip a turn to get to level 3. We can use one less card to get there and convert into a body. It's hard to say much else about Dungeon Guide. However, I will say that you can cut this down to 3 if needed, since turboing to level 3 isn't always what you need. It's more annoying, like you more really need it when you have like a hand clogged with Tera cards, which we're attempting to get out of by using our lovely, lovely Serene Water. But I mean, that doesn't always happen, right? And so she converts really well when you start getting those later turns. It means you can skip a materialization, materialize like a tech card. We can get out our Tome of Sorcery, right? We can start putting a Quicksilver Grail out, you know, we can get a Terrafring out or something like that. And then, you know, Dungeon Guide can get us to our level 3 turn. And then we'll go into our water cards. Actually, I want to talk about this card last, so let's put him at the bottom, because he's super, super important, and we love him very, very much. So anyways, 3 Fracture Eyes, yeah. I mean, I think this one kind of goes without saying for the most part. Fracture Eyes is the single best piece of Regalia removal in Grand Archive, because you can play it at a non-advanced element, and also you can play it in cards that have reserve cost of, you know, of more than 0, which is usually what those cards do. And of course, since we're running Backup Charger, this converts into not just a floating memory, but also a reservable that we can use for later to help us with our plays without going down in hand size. So you could run this at 3 to 4. I only run this at 3 right now because if I'm particularly afraid of items, we have a cool little card we'll discuss later. So yeah, but it converts really well. I'd play it at 3 to 4. It's a really good staple. Coriolis Sword, another card that I would run at 3 to 4. This card is really good because once you start leveling up and whatnot, it starts getting even more value. It works alongside your Empower to scale for even more value. And then we end up with some early game scenarios where we're going to use a Coriolis Sword and we're going to protect a cool guy like Hydro Guard, right? Which is going to help us make a lot of progress. And then if the winds are west, this card also replaces itself, so we're not going down in hand size, and it's useful at all stages of the game. I would play this at 3 to 4. I often regret it when I don't see multiples, so it just helps you survive. It helps things that help you survive. Seizing Edict, 0 cost Song of Frost. So I mean, duh. I mean, for those not familiar with this card, when your winds are south, it costs 2 less to activate, and if you're Kongming, if a unit is attacking in the combat phase, this is your answer to a lot of OTK strategies. This is your answer to, say, Jin. This is your answer to, say, Nico. This is your answer to, say, Tristan, right? An Incapacitate obviously exists, but we're going to be drawing a bunch of cards, and we can maybe stabilize using these cards to get there, and they need to get to a really high damage count to actually kill us. Since the mid-range game, we often recover from all of our healing. I'd play this at 2 to 4, depending on your local meta. I side 1. Ooh, cool guy alert, Cone of Frost. This is a fun card to use because it works in a few different spots. It works in your level 2 turn as sort of a pseudo board clear because you get Empower 3, and so you get all 3 effects of this. So you do 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, which is really cool. So it can help you clear board on that turn. It's also a combo with other cards that empower you to help do 6 damage to face. It helps you close, it helps you clear boards, but earnestly this card is not mandatory. This is more of a comfort card that fills a specific role. You can run this at anywhere from 0 to 4, and it's an easily side deckable card depending on your matchup. And of course, the most important card of the deck, this card's broken. I'm not really sure why they printed it, except for the fact that, you know, Kongming needs a little help sometimes. This is Hydro Guard Retainer. Hydro Guard Retainer, play it at 4, play it at no less. It is a taunter with a 1/4 body. This means it is sticky to get rid of, or they need to swing 2 bodies into it to get there, which means that you are staying alive. You are going to generate value with him. And if you get him early on your Kongming level, normally we have to get to Kongming level 2 to draw cards. We get our Kongming level 1 turn. Our winds are facing to the north. We face them to the south. Oh, sorry, we face them to the west. The camera's inverted. And then we draw a card. And then that helps us maintain value early on. It makes leveling up not hurt as much. And then when we get to a later game, when we start getting to Fey Eidolon, and we have a bunch of different like spells to sling around, Hydro Guard starts drawing us multiple cards. And we have better ways to protect them because our Coriolis ward amounts get bigger as we've leveled up too, which will also draw us cards. So this is really important. Try to keep these guys alive, but don't hesitate to throw it away to survive early game, since our goal is to get to this late game and then get into our little hostage situation that we're going to put the other player in. This card's so important. It synergizes so well with every other card in the deck. Play this at 4. Don't play it at any less. And now, this is what you guys have probably been waiting for, is actually talking about the Tera cards in Tera Kongming, and the fact that we're playing so many. I mean, endearingly, at our locals, we call this deck Tera Slop, because you're playing so many Tera cards, but these cards don't work alone. These cards work together. You need to put them together to be playing this deck and all the beautiful things that it has to offer. So let's start off with 4 Terracite. If you'd really want to, you could cut this down to 3, to be earnest. And for those not familiar with this card has the line of text that is very rare, preserve, so put it back into your material deck instead of your graveyard if you have activated it. Draw a card, which replaces itself. And that's really important, because what's going to happen is this card is going to become our missing copy of Grand Crusader's Ring. So we're going to play Terracite, we're going to put it into our material deck, preserved. And then when we materialize, we're going to materialize Terracite. And lo and behold, we have Grand Crusader's Ring, right? Because then it's going to go back into our material deck. We're going to grab it, we're going to play it, and then we're going to draw a card. And then also, it's going to shift our currents, which are probably south, from ending the turn on a draw turn. And then lo and behold, it's going to shift over to the west. And then we play something else, it shifted over to the north. And what's happened? Oh, end step. We go back to south, we draw a card. We've drawn like 3 cards throughout probably this course of this turn. So Terracite, really, really important. Try to protect it. Try to keep it there. It is also one of our preserves for Coronal of Rejuvenation. Okay. Another card that is important for our preserve side of our deck is Nature's Appeal. This card is definitely not one that many are familiar with, so I'm just going to read it out here. It is reveal the top level cards of your deck, put one of those cards into your hand, and put the other card into your material deck preserved. Put the rest on the bottom in any order. So this is going to like very cutely synergize with our Empower pieces, so we can dig pretty deep into our deck for an answer. So we can dig like 6 cards in, grab 2 or something like that. We can dig 4 cards in, grab 2, whatever pops up. And that's cute, but we're not really concerned about that as much. There's other aspects of this card that we are concerned about. The first thing is this card is a fast speed spell. So it's going to take our currents and it's going to shift them a direction. So say if we have a Hydro Guard out or something like that, and we have a beautiful, beautiful north turn, it's going to go north, and it's going to take us to the west, and then we're going to draw another card off of this, right? And then Nature's Appeal, by itself, if we use it at the end step, because of the fast speed, is going to plus us 1, because we're going to use this card. We're going to take a card from our hand, and we're going to take a card, and we're going to put it into our material deck, preserved. And then we can grab that card during our materialization phase, which means we have gotten 2 cards. We've replaced ourselves with Nature's Appeal while also shifting the wind, which could benefit Hydro Guard Retainer as well. This card is really important to play at 3 or 4. It's also going to help you dig for answers if you need it, because after all, when you're playing against those OTK decks or stuff like that, you're going to need to dig for like a Seizing Edict, or you're going to need to dig for like a Water Barrier or a Terra Shield or something like that. Like that is this is your way of sort of digging, this is your way of plussing, this is your way of shifting currents. Nature's Appeal does so much. I think against regular locals, this has begun to be like an incapacitate target because of how much value this ends up granting me in the moment. And also, it gives us a preserved card for Coronal of Rejuvenation, and then we can banish this. So we can play this. We can get a card preserved off Coronal of Rejuvenation. We can banish that preserved card for the cost. We can banish Nature's Appeal in our grave for the cost, and then we can pay the 2 at slow speed to Nature's Appeal again. So the synergy there is really, really cool. And that's why I started playing Cornhole Rejuvenation in this deck. But it depends on the synergy that you want to play. If you're not playing the package that I am, don't play this card. But if you are, it's really good. Let's go for our friend here, which is Leeching Bolt. And Leeching Bolt is the old card that effectively got replaced in the standard Water Tera Kongming list or whatever, right? The one that only runs like Bagua, Vital Demise, and maybe a Lubu or a Septernal Sage or something, and Covenant of Thorns, because it's a good card. Leeching Bolt is going to synergize with our Empower cards. It's going to recover us 2, and then it's also going to go into a material deck preserved, which means it can be used for Cornhole Rejuvenation. This is nice and handy whenever it's empowered, of course, right? So we're going to need to empower it with a Tome of Sorcery, or we're going to need to empower it with another source to get there. This also has this cool same tech with Cornhole Rejuvenation. If it's banished off of it and then empowered, instead of returning to the grave, it's going to return to the material deck. So we're not losing a card, we're actually gaining a card for next turn, which is a really cool synergy. And the reason that we're running this instead of running our friend here, which I believe I've put to the side of Bagua of Vital Demise, and the reason we're doing that instead is because Bagua of Vital Demise kind of relies on us being in a position where we're going to be going to west and west and east a whole lot. And that means that we're not really going to be that place to get these synergies with Bagua Vital Demise. Getting to west is going to be pretty easy for us, but getting to east is going to be a little trickier. We're going to need another spell to get in the way there. And 4 damage is great, but Leeching Bolt is often 4 damage or more damage for us, and as a result, we don't really need Bagua Vital Demise in this build of Tera Mage. That said, this is a really good card. It just doesn't have a place here in this strategy. So if you're playing other versions of this deck, I would recommend it. But for this deck, I would not. I would recommend Leeching Bolt instead to start clearing board, to start dealing damage to face, recovering, preserving, synergizing with Cornhole Rejuvenation. Now, let's get to the actual most important parts of Tera here, and that is our allies. The Tera allies are a slew of... There's more, but there are a slew of 3 Binguses that get so much done for you. And the first one here is Septernal Sage. 3 to 4 copies. This card is deceptively good. Because the thing is when we get to level 3, our goal is to stabilize, our goal is to heal, our goal is to stand strong and get to the point where we get a bunch of value. And Sage is going to help us get us there in a few ways, because when we play Sage, we're going to attack into a body that has 3 health, right? Which is the most common stat line in Grand Archive, is about 3 health. We're going to swing into it, it's going to die, Septernal Sage is going to recover us 3 so we can help to stabilize, or it's going to empower for some synergies, right? Depends what we need in this specific moment of time. And then it's likely going to die. They're likely going to see the value of this card. You're going to kill it. It's going to get preserved. You're going to materialize it. You have not lost a card. Your hand size has increased. You can play Sage again. You can do the same thing again. That's really valuable when you are stabilizing, and it's going to be a consistent force. It's going to be really difficult to get rid of unless they do a negate that banishes it specifically. So you are going to keep bringing out the Septernal Sage. It's going to keep doing its silly little things. And then once you get to a later point in the game, it's going to combo with Cone of Frost for a 9 damage combo. It's going to combo with Leeching Bolt for a 3, 6, 10 damage combo and whatnot, right? Yeah. 3, 6, 9. Also a 9 damage combo right there. And that's going to get you going a lot of places while you are progressing early into Tera and late into Tera, so it scales well in both directions. He's really good. Playing with 3 to 4. Also a really good card for stabilizing, because I mean the name of the game with the Tera allies is stabilizing and then taking advantage of what's happening later on to progress. And this is 3 Lubu. And Lubu is a Taunt Vigor with on attack you can pay 2 to when she's so sleepy attacked to wake her up again so she can attack again. And she has this privileged 4/4 stat line, which means when you're playing Lubu, you can play Lubu, kill an ally on the other side of the board that you haven't been able to clear. You can wake her up, kill another ally, and then she wakes up, and then someone has to swing into her with an ally, or they have to swing into her with an OTK, or they have to smoke bomb her with the usual OTK tools, or they have to smoke bomb her in order to make their progress. And so the sad thing about Lubu is likely she will get played on the field and she will die, but she's going to take out 2 to 3 things on the turn that you played Lubu, and she's going to help you stabilize. And once you get into a later game, once you've amassed a bunch of value, you've amassed a bunch of cards, you have ways to protect Lubu, you've had a turn where you go, oh, I have a Coriolis Ward with a Lubu, or something like that. She's going to start chunking face for 8 damage a turn, 2 cost to go into that 8 damage, she's going to start clearing board, and then she's going to wake up and be a taunt vigor. And once we get into that late game when we have so much value and we've cleared so much of the opponent's resources, she's going to be a pain in the butt to remove. She also synergizes with another card that's really important, so we're going to bring that up in a second. I'd run this at 3 to 4 because of how much she helps the game plan. One of our friends is Donger. This is a card that you can run at, I think, about 2 to 4, depending on the matchup. He has a bit of a trouble with wind, since Stifling Trap gives him pause, and of course he can be Dream Fairy'd away. A lot of cards can, but we can kill Dream Fairy pretty easily. It's not the end of the world. We have a lot of spell damage or miscellaneous damage happening. Dong is a card that was kind of like wiped off at first as just a card that either didn't have a home or wasn't good enough in Mortal Ambition, but the reality is this card is integral to the strategy, despite the fact that I run him at 2, since I knew I was running into a lot of wind players at that case tournament. But on enter, Dong will clear the most common stat line for you. He'll clear other bodies that have 3 health, the most common stat line, which is going to help a lot against these aggressive decks that are pushing in on you, or against any mid-range deck, right? Then he's going to wake up, because you give him Vigor till the end of the turn, and then he's a privileged 1/4 Interceptor. So Dong is going to probably blank out a turn against a lot of decks, and that's really important since we're trying to stabilize and get back into the swing of things, right? So we want Dong to blank out a turn, we want Dong to clear a board, we want Dong to help us stay alive. And also the Empower 3 synergizes with other things. It synergizes with our Leeching Bolt, it synergizes with our Cone Frost, it synergizes with our Harmonious Mantra. It helps us make progress in other ways as well if we want to use that in Power 3. And also, we use that in Power 3 for another reason, and these 2 cards are really important with it. We have 3 copies of Invigoration. This card is really funny because it reads really bad at first, right? Invigoration at first reads, put 3 buff counters on a ally that has already attacked, because for those not intimate, it has a class bonus, cost 2 less, it's 4 cost, it goes into 2. And then put level buff counters on target rested ally. So your ally has to already have attacked, and then you're going to put 3 buff counters on it. What is this doing? This card, like, you've seen more buff counters get put on like anything else, right? Like, it's like when you first see this, what is this doing? But it synergizes with our game plan in really important ways. For example, there's a reason that Dong is on like Invigoration. For those who haven't seen the card, there's a lovely Dong right on there. Look at that beautiful man in my poor camera quality. And then Dong is going to do his thing. He's going to get Vigor, and then he's going to be rested, and you're going to have Empower 3, and then you're going to Invigoration. You're going to put 6 buff counters on Dong, and he becomes a 7/10 Interceptor for that turn. This is very important. These 2 cards synergize together so well. You really want so like, and that's a way that you can stabilize, right? If you know that they've blanked a Smoke Bomb turn, or they don't have Dream Fairies, or ways to like easily remove Dong, you're going to be having like this big threat on board that's going to be keeping you alive. He is important, and Invigoration is an important combo with him. Invigoration is also really important alongside Lu Bu, because even though we do not quite get to the same in like 7/10, we don't get that in Power 3 for Dong. Invigoration can put 3 buff counters, or more, depending on if we've empowered, right? If we have the space to empower an Invigoration alongside a Lu Bu, it's crazy, it's nuts. And so we can swing Lu Bu, instead of waking her up, we can put 3 buff counters on her, and now we have a 7/7 Taunt Vigor. And that, once you get into the later parts of the game, once we've started outvaluing our opponent, they will not be able to get rid of this big lady once she gets there, and then we can start swinging 7, pay 2, 7. So the thing is, right, is we need to get to a point in Terra where we are closing out games because we've actually made it to our game state, right? Otherwise, some players are going to sit there and go, why can't I just also stall you out and begin to get resources back until I can kill you? The answer is these 3 cards right here will get you to that final push that you need after you've been holding them hostage for so long, and that will be the end of the game. So it's really important to have these for your overall win con. It's really important to have them for the combo with Dong. It's really important to have it to combo with Lu Bu. I play this at 3 because it feels bad when I play it at less and it goes away. Also, it's important to bring, like, you will use these, things will happen to your guys, and then you'll bring it back with Coronal of Rejuvenation, and who knows, maybe it goes on a Hydro Guard Retainer or something like that and begins to be a problem. So this card's really important. I'd run it anywhere from 2 to 4. Then finally in the main deck, we have 2 Yudi. Yudi is awkward because if players are running any sort of Fantasia hate, Yudi, you know, it starts to lose value because we're using it with pieces like Dong to empower. We're using it with pieces like Sage to empower. We're using it with a bunch of other random empower to get counters on here. But if the deck the other player is playing is not well equipped to handle with Yudi, and you get 2 to 3 root counters on it, and they suddenly have to pay 2 to 3 to attack while you're holding up like a really big hand size. Like at this point in the game, you're going to be holding like 10 plus cards in hand, to be blunt. It also shifts the currents, so you can use it to go from like you have a south turn, and then you got Terrasite. When you went to west, you Yudi, you go back to north. You can go to south, draw a card, and that will help you stabilize immensely if they're not running that Fantasia removal, and also it will lock them out of the game eventually, because if you have a Yudi on board, you have 2 to 3 root counters, and they now have to try and clear a Lubu, and they don't have the necessary spells to do that. You've won the game, right? Like that's plain and simple. I was playing into a meta that had Fantasia removal, so I kind of didn't put these as much as I'd like to, but I like running at like 3 in the main, 4 in the side, but it was too risky in the current event that I was playing, so I just played it at 2 for the decks that could not deal with it. And yeah, that's the beautiful, beautiful main deck, the beautiful, beautiful material deck. Let's go through the side deck and some cool tech options that you can consider while you're playing Water Tera. So for this event, I ran 3 Resolute Stand. You're going to be drawing off your cards like Terrasite or Nature's Appeal and your north-south turn, so you don't really mind blanking like a combat-based turn against somebody with this, with the alternative cost, because you're going to be drawing cards anyways, and surviving is the name of the game. So if you're against ally-heavy decks, this is a cool side card. This is even a cool main card in a lot of places. I have, for the OTK decks, I have 3 Spell Shield Tera, so if we're playing against Arasana or something like that, or we're playing against other ways to, you know, get there, maybe even Tristan's, and 2 Water Barrier, because it's float, which is like cute, right? You can also cut Water Barrier as well, depends on your local meta, but Terra Shield is a 2-cost way, gets you preserves for Coronal Rejuvenation, and it will prevent any super high damage swings happening from any different direction. So these are just like OTK preventers. Play them if you're afraid of that at your local meta or whatever event you're going to. An extra copy of Seizing Edict because it's broken. And if you're against ally heavy decks, I like running like 2 to 3 copies of this in either the main or the side. Tsunami has efficiency, so it costs less depending on the level that you activate it at, and it deals 3 damage if your winds are to the south to all rested allies, which usually people are just swinging face at you. They're not playing around Tsunami, and if they do start playing around Tsunami, that's also good for you. And what's cool about this is on the turn that you play a Kongming level 2, lo and behold, Empower 3. Tsunami is now a free board wipe depending on the situation. Or several other cards become a free board wipe depending on the situation that's happening, right? You get out your, put all my tarot cards at the bottom here, whoopsies. You got a Dong. A Dong means a free Tsunami, and then you also get the other cool Dong effects as well. And also, Septernal Sage, you can use this to get a free Tsunami too and also get 3 damage on board. So there's a bunch of like cute little plays that you have with this card to help clear boards if clearing boards is something that you really want to do. And the Dong play also, you have that like Empower 3, deal 3 other damage. And so if you're playing against a board that's like really chunky, or you've got some like Frosthorn Paladins or stuff like that, or Storm of Thorns is going to be a problem, you have the Dong, you have Tsunami to help you save the day there. So it's a really cute side deck card against those decks. And then I have a Nullifying Mirror on the side because Luxem Xander is probably your worst matchup in several different areas. So anyways, that is the deck profile for my Terra Slop stuff, and so I hope you enjoyed that part of it, but I want to take a little brief aside to sort of chat about a few extra cards that you can run, a few extra cards that you can consider. Are you afraid of Shenjus, random guys that are hard to remove, Overlord, or, you know, anything at all? Runeless Pillars. Runeless Pillars gives you Empower 2, so it helps with a Yudi, it helps get you free Tsunami, it helps with a bunch of other things, it replaces itself by drawing a card, and whenever our winds shift from all the way to the west to the east, we destroy a non-champion object that we do not control, so this can kill a Shenju, this can kill a Berserker Plate, this can kill a Magebane Lash if they don't have Temptation's Facade or anything like that, and or it can kill like against Tristan, it can kill like a Shadow's Claw or something along the lines, so that's really valuable. You can also do some cute plays with this with Quicksilver Grail and Fan of 7 Debts to make this a quick effect when someone is not expecting it, so you can play it early, it's domain, people don't have ways to interact with it. You bring out Quicksilver Grail, you bring out Fan of 7 Debts, and then you use it to pop something, and you get on your races. So this is like a really cute play. that you have with Ruinous Pillar. This is a card that I would suggest for the main or side, depending on what you are going up against, right? It's not a universal thing. We also have Conduit of Seasons is a cool card. An awkward thing in the case of this deck is that Conduit of Seasons is a card that doesn't synergize with our north-south stuff, but it is a card that can help you start stabilizing because you can recover, you can draw a card into memory, and then if your winds are facing over to the west, we prevent 2 damage, which means that it is a really cute Covenant of Thorns target against some decks, right? Because especially against, I said Luxembourg or something you can use this against, or like Fractals is something that you can use this against, because they have to repeatedly ping Conduit of Seasons for 2, and it's going to prevent 2, so this is like a cute little synergy that you can consider. It's not bad. In the cases of this deck, I think this card's a little unfortunate because it uses the west and the east directions, but Conduit of Seasons is like a cool tech card that you can use. And if you're playing a Bagua Vital Demise variant, I would definitely suggest like giving this a try as just a card in your repository. Bagua Vital Demise, we've kind of already talked about this, really important for just regular Terra decks, like the Water Tera stuff. Although, I don't like the Water Tera stuff as well, and my experience running into those decks has been like a relatively advantageous matchup because I begin to scale out of their kind of control, right? So, this is a card to look out for in the future. This is Channel Manifold Desires. Eventually, this card will be good. Because what this card does is if you have a bunch of cards preserved, it replaces itself. Okay, so for those who are not familiar, as an additional cost to activate this card, banish a preserved card from your material deck. And power X plus 2, where X is the reserve cost of the banished card. Then, if your shifting currents face north, put a preserved card from your material deck into your hand. So you're going to grab a preserved card back into your hand, you're going to banish a preserved card, and you're going to get like Empower 5 or Empower 4 with this, right? So right now, there aren't enough consistent ways to have bulk amounts of preserved cards in your material deck to use this card. So for Coronal Rejuvenation, we have enough ways to preserve cards that's worth running. We do not have enough ways to reserve 2 or more cards to get Channel Manifold Desires going, but this is a card to look out for in the future. And then there's some cool tech cards that you can run. Extricating Touch is really nice because we're playing a very long-term value-based game plan, right? We're trying to survive, we're trying to bunker down, and we have ways to recover our resources where the opponent does not. And so an Extricating Touch on something really important that they could use to kill us and whittling down their options there is going to go really well in the long game. So this is a really cool card to consider for the sideboard. Morgan, already talked about Morgan, prevents healing from decks that are healing a lot as well. Really good Quicksilver, really good Covenant of Thorns target, and also we get the passive effects of Glimpsing and Recovering. This is kind of a cool one, Coronation Ceremony. We play a lot of unique allies. We play Dong, we play, we specifically play Dong and Lu Bu, and this is like a 1-cost Spell Shroud to make sure that they stay in and aren't affected by things. So Coronation Ceremony is actually something to consider, especially if you're siding in Morgan to protect her as well. And of course, Ebbing Tide, you have to set this up early because it's rested, but it ends up being in power 2 every turn, and if you get a bunch of water cards in the graveyard, it can be in power more, so this is a cool card to consider for your material deck for if you think that you need more empower. And I just wanted to go through those like cool little options for you. But anyways, yeah, this is kind of an unscripted, rambly video. I'm sure that this went on for a while, but I just wanted to show off a cool few little like Terra cards here. It's unfortunate that I don't have any match footage with these. I would have really liked to bring out some of the footage that I had during my locals, during my case tournaments and stuff like that. Because earnestly, I've been winning some locals. I've been doing well at our bigger events with this deck. I obviously have, as I said, there's some rough matchups. If things are opting to mill you instead of, say, attack your life, your recover isn't going to do a whole lot. You have to get relatively lucky versus, say, something like Arasana that is going to repeatedly be swinging damage at you, but you have ways to recover. And obviously, Luxembourg is going to be a pain in the butt for you, and some Merlin builds will also be problematic because those 2 decks scale very well, but against other decks, against OTK decks, where you have all these tech cards that you can be running to make sure that you survive, you're going to run them out of their fuel that they use to kill you, and then you're going to stabilize, outvalue them, and kill them. And against ally decks, you can get to a point where you can repeatedly bring out big offenders, and their hand size is just going to end up being less than yours eventually, and so you can kind of get there and make progress. I think allies is harder than the other decks because obviously they can kill you early enough, but if you have the right cards to stabilize, you can get there. And a bunch of other late scaling decks have like some struggles with this. For example, if you go against a Neos Tony, you have Seizing Edicts and whatnot for the Blades of Creation. You have ways to reduce the damage. You have things to deflect. You can make it pay a bunch for them to swing with Yudi. And you have a bunch of really cool interactions like that that you can do. So I really hope, I don't imagine this video is not going to go super far. I'm not like a particular name or anything in the Grand Archive community, but I just wanted to show off this cool deck that I've been having fun with, and hopefully people who've been wanting to play Tera come through, try a similar build like this out, have a little fun, and enjoy that Tera is just a teeny bit better than they might have expected. Anyways, thanks for watching this. I really appreciate it. I will talk to you guys later when more Tera findings come out. Peace.